me read that. Psalm of Degrees of David. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. It is like the precious ointment upon the head that ran down upon the beard, even Aaron's beard, that went down to the skirts of his garment. As the dew of Hermon, as the dew that descended upon the mountains of Zion, for there the Lord commanded the blessings, even life evermore. I remember, let me tell you some stories that I think is going to help. I was ordained to preach, and pretty quickly upon that, I went to Arizona to start mission works or to preach the gospel in Arizona. Pretty quick after that. And one Sunday evening, like most churches, we were visiting in the foyer after services. I love that. That was one of my favorite times at church, is to visit with the brethren in the foyer. And there was probably, 6 or 7 of us standing around there talking, having a wonderful visit. And I said something, I don't even remember what it was. So I'm accepting fault here. But there was a lady over here that it didn't sit too good with her. And she got up, stormed in there, and dressed me down. She let me have it. I was like, whoa. Her husband was over here across the way. We were visiting. She stormed out angry. Well, then he proceeded to come over and poke me with his finger on the chest, agreeing with everything she said. And I was like, my van, my U-Haul is loaded out there. We're leaving this service or sometime in the morning, and we're going to go drive to Arizona. And this is no joke. I don't know. You ever experienced something surreal in life? It's just like, what just happened? I'm not kidding you. They walked out mad, and the lady across from me said something to somebody that beside me, and he fired off. He went off on her like a wild banshee. This is a church, man. This is right after a church service. And all of a sudden, it was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. Guess what I was thinking about? All the way to Arizona in that U-Haul. Headed to the mission field. Brand new pastor, just ordained. Oh, my goodness gracious. That was the biggest killjoy I've ever experienced in my life. All the way down there, questioning myself, second guessing. This lady's, I loved her. I loved him. They're probably right about some of the things, personal things. So I'm like, okay, I've dealt with that. And then I second guessed myself for several years out there on the field after that. Well, I had been to an association meeting there in Arizona. It was wonderful. I love association meetings. I'll get to that a little bit later. And the first one I went to, that place was packed, man. Everybody was just friendly. They loved the Lord. They loved me, loved my family. Everybody loved each other. Good visits, good singing, good preaching, good praying, good eating. The thing we come to expect. Well, the second year I was there, they elected me to preach like I'm doing right now. Oh, this is cool. So the third year I was there, I'm in the foyer visiting a preacher friend of mine. I had a lot of confidence, a good powerhouse theologian. He's standing there holding his baby with his wife, and we're visiting. We're having a good time. That's what people do at associations, isn't it? Well, this other man came up to this man that I was talking to and called him a name. I forget what it was. It was either a Universalist or a Calvinist or something like that. Just blatant angry. And I'm fixing to preach, by the way. I'm fixing to get in the pulpit and preach. And I was like, that was weird. He handed it's out of characteristic for this man. He got upset. He handed that baby off to his wife. He was holding his baby. He stormed down to the front, and I was like, what in the world? So I kind of followed him down there. I sat on the front pew, and well, he caught that guy right. It would be right here. Same setup as this. I was sitting right there where Brother Riggs was sitting, and the moderator, Bob Pogue, was sitting right down here on the left of me, and these two were getting into it right there in front of everybody. And then another preacher came, and then another preacher came. I'm guessing, I may be wrong. I'm going to throw a number out there, maybe 5 of them, 5 or 6. Man, they were going at it. this wonderful association that I had been a part of for 3 years now. And I looked over at Bob, and I was like, I mouthed it to him. I don't know how he would remember this. I go, I do not want to preach. He's like, huh? You're preaching. I was like, oh my goodness. Y'all know what my text was? I bet you every one of you guess it right now. It's the same one I just read. Oh my goodness, there's that outline. Used the same text, but that outline was gone now. I'm sitting there shaking in my boots. I was young. I was a young preacher, 29 years old. All these guys were older than me. And I'm about to get up there and preach this wonderful text because, I was just so moved and so moved by the association. I love associations. So that was my second bad experience like that at church. Seen 2 explosions within a short, couple of years. Things I didn't know really happened. I was naive, I guess. But I'm going to preach this text again at this church, at this association meeting. It's going to be a little different. Y'all seem like wonderful people to me. I've seen you before. I've been with you before, and I love every one of you. So it's not one of those kind of sermons. But I want to preach this thing the way I meant to preach it 20 years ago when I was a young man. Y'all, why are we here? You ever ask yourself that question? Why am I here? What am I doing here? What is the purpose of me breathing the air that God gave me? And occasionally I get a little down in the dumps and I ask the Lord, Father, why am I here? What is the point? What am I doing here? What do I need to get up and do every morning? And the answer is always the same. Steve, get the Word of God and preach it the best you know how, and I'll help you. And I'm going to drive that sermon home for you. You just study it and you preach it. So that's what I do. I have to ask myself why I was here. I was at a church meeting the other day, and I don't want to leave you in suspense. Let me tell you about that great big association. After that fight, the next year, half that crowd was gone. The next year, half of that half crowd was gone. And they ran just a few people after that. It's starting to build back up a little bit. It's all right. We fellowshiped anyway, those who stayed. Don't you need purpose in life? I mean, we live in a world where apparently we have to make money and buy homes and go on vacation, recreation, rest and relaxation. That's the way of the world, and some of us just ain't able to do that. Some of us really don't care. So what can I do, as a man who don't care about them things? I can only study the Word and preach the Word of God. Because that's why we're here. If God called us for vacation, recreation, rest and relaxation, boy, wouldn't that be easy? That's where the rest of the world's going. But we have something more important to that, and I hope to get that point across today, this afternoon. I lost track of time. I've had COVID, and it messed me up a while back. But anyway, let's get to the text. Ain't that what we want to do? Don't we want to find out what God's Word says? Don't we want something from the Word of God to help us and give us reason to be here on earth? Let me tell you what it's not for. I was preaching the other day and I mentioned something about some missionary Baptists who thought that we ought to get guns and hoard up and start, a revolution. And I got 2 or 3 amens from the church, loud ones. I don't get amens. And you know what I was not talking about? I did not want to do that. I don't believe in that. But the people's minds are, well, let's get some guns and take over. But I think after today, I hope we realize after this message, that's not what we're here to do. Togetherness is a delightful thing. Right here in the text. Look at verse 1. Psalm 133, verse 1. Behold, how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. That word pleasant and pure, in its purest form, simplest form, means delightful. How delightful it is. I don't know about you, but I love delightfulness. I love delightful things. Did you ever go to a drugstore when you was a kid? I remember this. You'd go in there and you'd sit down at the ice cream bar there, and the guy would say, "What's your delight?" That's the word. Delightful. How good and pleasant it is, or delightful it is, for brethren to dwell together in unity. It's a delightful thing. Shouldn't it be a delightful thing? Shouldn't it be as wonderful as ice cream? Ice cream, you're going to get up getting fat and diabetes after that. But I'm telling you right now, this sort of delightfulness we're talking about right here is helpful to the soul, to the mind. It's helpful for the Word of God. It's helpful to a church. It's helpful for association. That word unity means togetherness. There's two words there. Brethren dwelling together means unity, or it means togetherness. And this word means togetherness. It is a delightful thing to dwell together in togetherness. Being together. It's a delightful thing. We as God's children are allowed to have a little delight in our life, in our world. But we are different. We're God's people. Our delight should come from what? From God. From the Word of God, and from each and every one of our relationships with each other. It ought to be a delightful thing, and it ought to not be embarrassed about it. You ought to look forward to it. I don't know about you, but I look forward to going to that drugstore when I was a kid and having that guy say, "What's your delight?" Butter pecan ice cream. But my delight today, I don't feel good. Some of you don't either. As we heard this morning, the world's going to pot. It's hard to get up in the morning and do anything. I don't feel good. I want a little delight in my life. Thank God for this association. You know what else? Thank God for your local New Testament church. That's about as delightful as things can get. I want a little delight. How good. Behold how good and pleasant, how delightful it is for us to dwell together in togetherness. Something else you can learn from this text. Verse 2, togetherness is a holy thing. What's holy in the world today? Oh, that's holy. This is a holy thing. I've heard people talk about holiness in sports. It's a holy thing. It's a holiness in weddings and all sorts of crazy venues. It's just a holy thing. No. You want to know what true holiness is? It's when brethren dwell together in pleasantness and delight. That is a holy thing. Look at verse 2. It is like the precious ointment upon the head that ran down upon the beard, even Aaron's beard, that went down to the skirts of his garment. You know what that oil he's talking about is? It's a holy oil. True, blue, heaven sent, actual holiness. The real thing, like Coca-Cola used to be. The real thing. True holiness comes from God, and it comes from togetherness and unity. You don't believe that holiness is important? Let me tell you how it's dangerously important, brethren. You want to be the killjoy of somebody going out to do the Lord's work? That's dangerous. Don't do that. How dangerous is it? Exodus chapter 30, verse 23 through 38. Exodus chapter 30, verse 32 through 38. Upon man's flesh shall it not be poured. That's talking about an ointment that God had prescribed. Do not pour this on a man's flesh, neither shall ye make any other like it after the composition of it. It is holy, and it shall be holy unto you. Whosoever compoundeth any like it, and whosoever puts any upon a stranger, shall even be cut off from his people. Brethren, that's some tough language. I don't think you realize how tough that is. You don't think holiness ain't important to God? That holy oil was so... When God said, here's this ointment, you make it, it's for Aaron, and it's for the priest. Don't make it anywhere else, by anybody else, for anybody else. And if you do, you will be cut off from your people. You know what that means, in my opinion? Dead. Killed. Some may argue with that. But if that's not holiness, I ain't sitting here. He says it again, verse 38. He says, whosoever shall make like unto that smell thereunto shall even be cut off from his people. He said it twice. If I've learned anything in seminary, when you see something twice that close together, pay special attention. Brethren, to dwell together in unity is a holy thing. Don't mess it up. I bugged you, keep it to yourself. If you bug me, I should keep it to myself. The things that you bug me about you and things that you bug me about, that's extra biblical things. It's not important. You know what's more important than me venting off to you or you venting off to me about what bugs you or me? Is the holiness of unity. It's a precious thing. Do we understand how precious unity is? I love associations. I never went to them when I was a kid. Started going to them just before I was ordained there here in Arkansas. And I remember going to those things, and that's been 20 years ago, y'all. I don't know how much y'all remember that. But boy, the singing, I'd go in the preaching. Brother Bull, James Bull, I used to love watching him play. Oh, he was just a thing to behold when he played that piano. It was just wonderful, James Bull played. And the eating, meeting, oh, it was so wonderful. I told Bobby Neal, my pastor, I said, I just love associating meetings. They're just wonderful. I'm glad we associate. Some people can find a reason that we don't need to associate. It's all extra biblical. Yeah, but it's fruitful. It's delightful. Don't we need a little delight in our lives, especially as believers, a world bent against believers? Don't we need a little delight? Don't we need to know what we're doing is a holy thing and God is pleased with it? Oh my goodness. Who else do we want to please? Your mama? Your daddy? Your pastor? No, yeah, try to please them. But I'm telling you, we ought to please God. And to know God is pleased with us, we have to do that through unity. Unity in the gospel, unity in the Word of God, togetherness. Love for the Word of God more than love for ourselves. Love for the Word of God and meeting together with God's people. More value that more than we do our own opinion. But my pastor used to say, opinions ain't worth much. They're not, really not worth that much. But dwelling together in unity is a holy thing. Third thing, dwelling together in unity is a fruitful, useful, productive thing. You ever wonder sometimes if you're wasting your life? What am I doing? Why am I here on earth? What am I accomplishing? What's going on here? What do I need to? Let me tell you something. Dwelling together with unity is not only a delightful thing, it's not only a holy thing, but it's a fruitful thing. I don't know about you, but I'm a little bit decrepit. I've had brain trauma. I don't feel good anymore. I don't feel like doing much anymore. There's not much I can accomplish. I can't do things very well. I used to be an industrial construction worker, A1 welder. I taught welding in Botec. Can't do that anymore. Can't make a living at it anymore. I used to do commercial construction with my uncle. We remodeled homes, nice rich people's homes in New York City. Boy, we did some wonderful work. I can't do that anymore. I'm not very productive when it comes to that sort of stuff anymore. Used to be if we went fishing, I would beat you. I'd catch more than you. Somebody say not me. All right, welcome back to Arkansas. Just before I went to Arizona, I watched my boat and truck drive off. I sold it. But I don't feel like fishing anymore. But here I am on this earth. I need to do something. Did God not make man to do something? Did he not put us on earth, breathed into our nostrils the breath of life, and then gave us something to do? Can't we read about that in Genesis? I need to do something, y'all. I need to be fruitful and productive in life. If you're not, well, I don't want to get political. We live in a world that don't seem to want to be productive anymore. They just want money. Give me that money. Money, money, money. No. I want to be useful in life. I know I'm young, but I'm a little decrepit. Been preaching a while now, so I don't know if I can't weld. I can't do anything. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to build a house for my wife to live in. I'm doing all the work. Not very good. But we learn here in verse 3. As the dew of Hermon, and as the dew that descended upon the mountains of Zion, for there the Lord commanded the blessings, even life evermore. As the dew of Hermon on Mount Zion. Mount Zion literally means parched place. So what does that tell you about the dew of Mount Hermon? That's way up there in northern Israel, probably Lebanon today, something like that. I don't know. It's no cap year round. And that melts in the spring, and that runs down that, and it makes the Jordan River. Y'all know where that is. And there's a lot of things growing around the Jordan River. They pump out of that. The Sea of Galilee comes from the dew of Hermon. So do you see what he's talking about? The writer of the psalm that brethren dwelling together in unity is a useful, productive thing. We ought to love one another in the Word of God. We ain't even got to my favorite part of this sermon. Let me tell you why. I grew up in a violent home. You may not know this. Capable of great violence. When I was younger, I was raised that way. Enjoyed it. It was a fun thing. You know the writer of this psalm, King David? You know when he was a teenager, he cut a man's head off? You know what the King David's business was? This holy man, this man after God's own heart was? Violence. And he recognized how beautiful it was for brethren to dwell together in unity. How'd you like to go off into to fight war with a bunch of men who didn't like each other and hated each other, didn't get along? Our business today is not violence. Sometimes I wished it was. Oh, I can get that. I can do that. Come on, let's have a throwdown. But it's not. It's harder than violence. King David, as far as I'm concerned, had it made in the shade. All he had to do was go out and hack and not be hacked. And him and his bunch hack until they won. That's pretty simple, cut and dried. Today it's not so simple. We receive violence, if I read the scriptures right, more than we hand out violence. We don't mete out violence. We absorb and take violence. We do that for Jesus Christ's sake. What do I'm saying? Turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 10. And then we'll close. I wouldn't want to keep us long today. It's just I'm seeing this thing with angry, political, vicious, missionary Baptists. Forget the rest of them. I don't know those people. I just know missionary Baptist, and the rhetoric that comes from a missionary Baptist church is spooky. This is not our planet. This is God's planet. Let me tell you something. God can take care of business anytime He wants to. What are we supposed to do? Look at verse 3, 2 Corinthians 10:3. For though we walk in the flesh, what? We do not war after the flesh. Is that pretty plain and simple? Is that pretty cut and dry? Is that hard? Can that be explained away? You want to go buy an M4, you and your buddies, and go take over the government as missionary Baptists? You're making a mistake. That's not our job. Let me tell you something. God used Israel to fight the enemies. Then Jesus came along. Now we fight the enemies in high places. By the Word of God. Through unity. Through love. Through togetherness. Through delightfulness in the Word of God and God's people. That's how we war today. Verse 4, for our weapons of our warfare are not carnal or physical, but mighty through God through the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalted itself against the knowledge of God, and bringeth into captivity every thought of obedience of Christ. What is our business today? Our business is to get the Word of God and to get rid of those bad attitudes. Don't go to a missionary Baptist church today and say the word Democrat, liberal, Republican. You're asking for a fight. What is God, a Democrat or Republican? Huh? Is he a liberal or conservative? What is he? Let me tell you what he's not. Is not a man. What was Jesus? He was a man. What did he say? Render unto who? Caesar what? The things that belong to Caesar. This world we live in is not God's world. It's the devil's world. This planet, this universe, this solar system, the cosmos we live in belongs to God. And he can clean it out anytime he wants to. You know, children of Israel used to fight with swords. We fight with the sword of the Spirit, the Word of God. But let me tell you right now, God has a host in heaven that can throw down with anybody. It's called angels. You don't believe that? Just ask Sennacherib. Y'all ever heard of him? One angel, one night, killed an army of 186,000 people. Now, how many angels are there on God's side? And if I read my Bible correctly, if I understand prophecy correctly, there's coming a time where the angels are going to mete out a little justice on this earth. And they will do it right. Better than you can, Democrat. Better than you can, Republican. Better than you can with your little M4. By the way, I ain't saying you shouldn't go to war. Go to war. If America asked you to go to war, go to war. I ain't bad-mouthing war, but I'm saying that's not our job, is to go and change things like that. We ought to dwell together in unity. Coming from a man, you know the Bible calls David a man after God's own heart. So we can read this psalm, and can we not learn? If God had a man after his own heart write a psalm, can we? A man, his business was violence, but he was a sweet, reasonable man. You'll see that. There was times when he got upset and did things that were kind of odd. But generally speaking, he was a reasonable man, was he not? There was times he could have just went to clean house, but he didn't do it. He had a lot of grace. Remember when Saul was out to kill David? Walked in that cave where David was. Right there, right then. Could David not have killed that man right then, right there? And he didn't do it. I don't know if David had tears in his eyes when he cut that piece of Saul's garment off and then showed it to him. I don't know. But wasn't he a sweet man? Shouldn't we be that way? Shouldn't we be sweet psalmists? Shouldn't we be sweet, reasonable, God-fearing, knowing and believing that God has got it all under control and he's going to take care of business someday? Doesn't that help us get out of bed in the morning? Huh? It does me. I have no control. I can't make the president do anything. Oh, I can vote. I can petition. Whatever. But I'll tell you one thing I can do. I can come to my church and I can sweetly fellowship with others who believe in Jesus Christ like me. I cannot cause trouble. I cannot hurt them. I can avoid trying to hurt them. I can avoid trying to spew off them and taking shots at. I can avoid doing that. And I know that that's going to be a pleasant thing and delightful. And I know that's a holy thing. I know that. And I know that can be useful and productive in the work of God. Ain't that why we're here? To be useful and productive in the work of Jesus Christ. The kingdoms of this world, the Bible says, in the end days is going to become the kingdoms of God. Let God take care of that business. He can. I just discovered the known galaxy is 13 billion light years wide. You wrap your brain around that? That's how far light can travel at 186,000 miles per second in 13 billion years. Let me tell you something. Distant means nothing to God. When we say God has it in control, don't we believe that? He has it in control. You don't think God knows what's going on in the politics of this world? You don't think God don't know what's going on in the governments of this world? He don't think God knows what's going on in the mind of lawmakers who give speeches? Some crazy. I don't know what they're talking about, some of them, when they're speeches. By the way, had a rainy day the other day. I was sitting in the house and I watched a bunch of YouTube speakers in the House of Representatives giving some wonderful speeches. There are people in this world who know what's going on in the world. But I'm telling you right now, nobody knows like God. We ought to get the Word of God. We ought to love one another. We ought to be unified. We ought to meet and associate in meetings. I remember those youth rallies when I was a kid. Oh boy, we look forward to that every month. Do you remember that? Oh, going to get that rally stick. Y'all remember what that was? Whatever church brought the most people got the rally stick. Oh, we live for that. Singing, good preaching. I didn't recognize how wonderful that was until I really got to looking at this psalm pretty good. It's a wonderful thing for us to meet together and associate. And then I had planned on, when I moved back here from Arizona, to go to a lot of association meetings. But I learned that Arkansas has like 30. I'm sorry. I ain't going to be able to do that. But we have a local one here. I'm going to try to go to it. We have a state meeting. I try to go to it. Because I love being together with others who believe in the Word of God, has Jesus as their Savior. Isn't that a wonderful thing? I'll close with all that. God